Thanks for each one of you. I see a lot of pink and red in the audience, and it is Valentine's Day, isn't it? My husband said to me on the way over here, he said, "Oh yeah, it is Valentine's Day, isn't it?" I forgot. I said, "Oh Dan, my goodness, you're so good to me all the time." And he is so thoughtful and kind, and I told him to just take that $5 he would have spent on a card and take me to lunch. That'll be good, won't it? That will be good. This morning, though, we're going to talk about the ways of love. And we do know that the ancient Greeks had many names for love, and we have one. Isn't that interesting? We have one. Then Eros actually is the love that we think of generally on Valentine's Day, and that is romantic love. But the love that I'm going to talk to you about today is agape. Agape. And it's one of the things that the world needs now. I believe there was a song about that too. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. We can't get enough. We need more and more. And the more we remind ourselves that we need to offer love, maybe we'll offer a little less hatred, vindictiveness. There's been plenty of that in the world, hasn't there? So this morning I have a reading, and it was by Sebastian Junger. He's the man that wrote the book that was so wildly popular about the boat that sank, in the Perfect Storm, I believe was the name of the movie. It was a fascinating movie. He wrote that book. He also wrote a couple of other books. One of them, I believe, was War. I did not read that. The one I'm going to read from this morning is a book that he wrote called Tribe. And the reason he wrote it was that he was also a war correspondent, and while he was overseas in Afghanistan, he observed that how cohesively the service members act together. There's no race. There's no difference. There are no politics. There's nothing else that would separate this bond, this brotherhood that the members have while they're serving. And particularly in the foxholes, they're serving together. You see, they have to have one mission. One mission. And so while they're doing that, they're strictly serving their mission with their brothers and sisters. And then when they get home, how disappointing it is to see all the unrest and the separation and the division that's going on in their country that they just fought for. So I'm going to read just a little bit. I'm not actually talking about that this morning, but I'm giving you just a little of his background so you'll know where he's coming from when he wrote this particular book, Tribe. And in the introduction, he says, "In the fall of 1986, I was just out of college. I set out to hitchhike across the northwestern part of the United States. I'd hardly ever been west of the Hudson River, and in my mind, what waited for me out in Dakota and Wyoming and Montana was not only the real America, but maybe the real me as well. I was searching for that." He says, "I'd grown up in a Boston suburb where people's homes were set behind deep hedges or protected by huge yards, and neighbors hardly knew each other. And they didn't need to. Nothing ever happened in my town that required anything close to a collective effort. Anything bad that happened was taken care of by the police or the fire department, or at the very least, the town maintenance crews. That's who we called. He said, I worked for them one summer. I remember shoveling a little too hard one day and the foreman telling me to slow down because, as he said, some of us have to get through a lifetime of this. Slow down, brother. He says the sheer predictability of life in an American suburb left me hoping, somewhat irresponsibly, for a hurricane or a tornado or something that would require us to band together as humans, as brothers and sisters, to survive. Something that would make us feel like a tribe, that we belong with each other. What I wanted wasn't destruction and mayhem, but the opposite, solidarity. I wanted the chance to prove my worth to my community and my peers. But I lived at a time in a place where nothing dangerous really ever happened. Surely, this was new in the human experience, I thought. How do you become an adult in a society that does not ask for sacrifice? How do you become a man in a world that doesn't require courage? I wondered. He says those kind of tests clearly weren't going to happen in his hometown. But putting himself in a situation where he had to have very little control, like hitchhiking across the country, seemed like a decent substitute at that time. So he says that's how I wound up outside Gillette, Wyoming. One morning in late October 1986, with my pack leaned against the guardrail and an interstate map in my back pocket. He said semis were rattling over the bridge spacers and hurtled on toward the Rockies, 100 miles away. Pickup trucks passed with men in them who turned to stare as they went by. A few unrolled their window and threw beer bottles at me that exploded harmlessly against the asphalt. He said in my pack I had a tent and a sleeping bag and a set of aluminum cook pots and a Swedish-made camping stove that ran on gasoline and had to be pressurized with a thumb pump. That and a week's worth of food was all I had with me outside Gillette, Wyoming that morning when I saw a man walking toward me up the on-ramp from town. From a distance, he said, I could see that he wore a quilted old canvas union suit and carried a black lunchbox. I took my hands out of my pockets and I turned to face him. He walked up and stood there studying me, he said. His hair was wild and matted, and his union suit was shiny with filth and grease at his thighs. He didn't look unkindly, but remember, I was quite young and alone, so I watched him like a hawk. I didn't know what to expect, he said. The man asked me where I was headed. California, I said. "How much food do you got?" he asked. I thought about this. I had plenty of food, along with all the rest of my gear. He obviously didn't have much. I'd give food to anyone who said he was hungry, but I also didn't want to get robbed. And that seems like what was about to happen to me, being a young man on the road alone in Gillette, Wyoming. I didn't know much about the world, he said. So he said to the man, "Oh, I have just a little cheese." I lied. But I stood there ready, but he just shook his head. "You can't get to California on just a little cheese," the man said. "You need more than that." The man then told him that he lived in a broken down car and that every morning he walked 3 miles to a coal mine outside of town to see if they needed fill-in work. Some days they did, some days they didn't, and this was one of the days that they didn't. "So I won't be needing this," the man said, opening his black lunchbox. "I saw you from town, and I just wanted to make sure you were okay." The lunchbox contained a bologna sandwich, an apple, and a bag of potato chips. The food had probably come from a local church, no doubt. Younger said, "I had no choice but to take it." I thanked him and I put the food in my pack for later, and I wished him luck. The man turned and made his way back down the on-ramp toward Gillette. He said, "I thought about that man for the rest of my trip. I thought about him for the rest of my life. He'd been generous, yes, but lots of people are generous. What made him different was the fact that he'd taken responsibility for me. He'd spotted me from town, walked half a mile out a highway to make sure I was okay. A stranger." Robert Frost wrote that home is the place where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in. We all know about that, don't we? The word tribe is far harder to define, but a start might be the people you feel compelled to share the last of your food with. Is that your tribe? Doesn't matter what color they are, does it? And it doesn't really matter their politics, does it? Your tribe? Someone that's going to take you in. They see your problem. They see your challenge. And they open up their heart. And they just want to love you. That's the way of love. So Younger goes on to say, "For reasons I'll never know, the man in Gillette decided to treat me like a member of his tribe." And the book that he has written is about why that sentiment is such a rare and precious thing in modern society, and how the lack of it has affected us all. It's about what we can learn from tribal societies about loyalty, about belonging, and the eternal human quest for meaning. It's about why so many people, war feels better than peace, and hardship can turn out to be a blessing, and disasters are sometimes remembered more fondly than weddings or tropical vacations. Isn't that amazing? Because you've belonged. He goes on in the book to describe some of the times that he shared in Afghanistan with the troops, what he learned there, what he felt there about belonging. It's a fascinating book. I haven't picked it up for years, and I was just thinking yesterday about talking about the ways that we love, and the story came back to me. So he goes on to say, humans don't mind hardship. In fact, they thrive on it. What they mind is not feeling necessary. Right now, we have a lot of separation and people that have been at home alone for some time, and they're feeling depressed, and maybe they're feeling not necessary. And we need to reach out in ways large and small, any way that we can. And I know that many of you do. I know most of you do. I know that you do in whatever ways you can. So what are some of the ways that we can love? So we know that we love in ways that are bigger than they seem. We offer smiles when maybe we're crying inside ourselves. We love by lifting others when we may even be feeling torn down. We love by holding doors, holding hands, holding hope, holding on, making phone calls, encouraging people to hold on. You're remembered, we care, we love you. We love by letting go of our fears, our regrets, expectations, definitions. We love with sweat. I know a lot of people that do that. They build fences and gardens and all of those wonderful things. Maybe they put on roofs after storms. So we love with sweat. We love by building houses and working common jobs. Maybe we sweep the streets. With trades and hobbies, we love. We love by fixing cars and planting trees, carrying groceries, building fences. Perhaps we love by tearing down walls. Maybe that's how we love. We love with passion, with kisses, both gentle and consuming. We love in soft surrender wherever we are, by opening our hearts to others who are in pain. We love with our hands. We love by cooking meals and holding jackets. You remember holding your jackets for your children when they were younger? Your younger brother, your younger sister. That's sweet. A lot of love goes into that action, doesn't it? We love by planting seeds, tending soil, pouring water, providing light. By checking seat belts, carrying snacks, opening our arms, our homes, our lives. In all these ways we love. We love softly sometimes, with cradles, rocking, gentle hums. We love wildly with the loyalty of the wolves, the spritelessness of birds, the fierce protectiveness of the bear. We love in many, many ways. We love in daylight with laughs and play. We love with self-care. We love by keeping our own pitchers full enough to water new sprouts, by taking deep breaths and deep dives, short breaks and long sighs. We love with the foods we eat, don't we? We love our body, the ways we move, the hours we sleep. We love with our art and color, and we love with sound and music, with our imagination and our hearts, and dance with notes and with words, on marble and on clay. We love. In all these ways that we love, you could probably offer several dozen more than I have right here today. What kindness has been extended to you recently? Has someone offered love? Has someone offered kindness? On our Tuesday call this week, we talked about how we could offer love, how we could check in on each other. And we're going to do more than of that. If you'd like to be part of that team, let me know. We're just going to check in with each other and make sure that we're okay at this time. There's so many ways to love. I see people out every day loving, gently and kindly. And I've certainly been the recipient of love myself. My mother, I like to think of her as one of the greatest lovers of all time. How lovingly she held children on her lap. All the days of her life, from the time she was a child when her own mother passed away, and she held her younger brothers in her lap and coddled them. I remember her talking about the youngest one, my Uncle Neville. He was just a tiny little thing when their mother died, and he'd wake up in the middle of the night crying. And she'd get up as a child herself, so unselfishly, and hold him and rock him back to sleep. And the little sister that finally died that had an obstruction in her stomach, she had to, and how she would cry all night because she was hungry. She died just before their mother did, and my mom would say that they tried every type of milk, everything that they could, that the baby might take in, and she'd get up in the middle of the night, a child herself, and milk a goat to see if the baby would take that. But she didn't. I think of so many ways that my mother taught me about love, and I know each of you had the same type mother. Maybe you didn't. If you didn't, I know that you've been that type mother, whether you had children or not. And you've had examples in your life of that type mother. And how my mother, even at the end of her days, in her last year of life, with a back fracture, and she couldn't get around. The great-grandbaby needed a babysitter one night. She said, "Bring her here, put her in the crib, and I'll sit by her crib all night long and make sure she's okay." And I've thought of that so many times. I've thought of my mother's hands, how gently and lovingly and kindly she touched us, loved us, fed us with love. One of my nephews said that being at Grandma's was better than being on a cruise ship. And he was right, because she prepared whatever you wanted for breakfast. If she had to fix 6 different types, she did, didn't she, Sherry? Yeah, Grandma's love. That's what I want to convey to you this morning. That's what love is, and we can all do that. We can all be that. And right now, maybe this agape love, maybe that's what we need more than ever. Love your neighbor as yourself, especially your neighbor that might think differently than you do, might worship differently than you do. That neighbor, love him, love her. Maybe you can love with a bologna sandwich. Or maybe a piece of cheese. Whatever it is, I ask of you, and I thank you for being love wherever you go.